You know you're a new dad when you start celebrating a 3-hour stretch of sleep like it's a luxury vacation.
Or when you Google, is it normal for a baby to stare at me like they've seen the future?
Today on Dads to the Future, we're welcoming our buddy Stew to the Dad Club. And trust us, the only thing more unpredictable than time travel is a newborn sleep schedule.
This one's all about those newborn moments, those sweet, some stinky, and all unforgettable.
Welcome, welcome, my friends and fathers and family. Welcome back to Dads to the Future, the show where fatherhood is the adventure and sleep is the mythical treasure we're all trying to find.
I'm Shoff, proud girl dad, snack hoarder, and part-time diaper ninja. Joining me as always is the man who knows time travel and tummy time, Vactor.
Yeah, today's episode is called From Sleepless to Speechless, our newborn dad moments. We're joined by a very special guest today, our friend Mr. Stew Jetson, who just entered the wild, wonderful world of fatherhood.
Now, Stu is no stranger to the spotlight. He made his TV debut as a kid on the Seattle children's show Ranger Charlie and Roscoe, a moment we're calling his very own Hill Valley debut. And now he's taken on his biggest role yet, being a dad.
Yeah, this episode's going to be an honest, off-the-cuff conversation. No scripts, just stories. We'll hear what it's like for Stew, share some of our newborn highs and lows, and catch up on life since our last episode.
Now, if you're a new parent, or you're about to be one, or just remember those chaotic early days, this one is for you. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, Stew, welcome to the show, sir. First off, how are you feeling?
Man, that is a loaded question. It's 8 o'clock. I'm feeling all kinds of things. You know, I think tired is an understatement. Feeling a lot of things.
Oh, yeah. Shoff, do you remember your first night as a father? Do you remember that?
Vaguely. I think so. Like, in terms of the experience, she was actually born in the afternoon, so we had like a very decent span of time before it was like actually bedtime, and we definitely weren't tired at that point, because it was like you're running on adrenaline, like you just like had extra reserves built up somehow. But she went into labor like at midnight. And then until about like, I think 1, maybe 2 o'clock, that was when she, in the afternoon, that's when she finally had delivered our first daughter, Emily. And so then we got to experience a full like afternoon with her, which was really nice. So the evening, I don't remember so much, but I do remember a funny thing I'll tell you guys in a little bit about the dinner. I was trying to get dinner for us, and it turned into a whole big mess. So, yeah.
And that was before COVID, right?
Actually, she was born during COVID's lockdown procedures. It was July 2020, so the COVID was still pretty intense. She actually gave birth at home. We did a home birth, a home water birth, and we only had 2 midwives at the house with us. That was it. So it was a really interesting experience, and no drugs of any kind either. It was nuts. It was nuts. So very different experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Ours was also during COVID, but it was a year into it. So it was 2021.
Okay.
And it was in the hospital. So everyone was masked up besides the doctors, everyone else. And then I was the only person allowed in to the actual labor room. And I remember my wife, you were locked into the hospital. Like I couldn't go out and come back because of the lockdown things and COVID stuff. So it was like, it felt like I was in prison a little bit. And I was like, oh man, I can't go get a burger.
You're a father now.
That's true. Which I had that moment when my son was born. I remember it feeling like a switch had come on. And as soon as he came out, it was like immediately I felt, oh, my life is different now, because that is something I have to care for now. Like I immediately just, my heart like stopped, and I was like, oh, like even though, I had known for 9 months that my wife was going to give birth, it was like putting it into reality was like a totally different thing. And so when he was born and when he came into the world, I was like, oh no, I got to be a dad now. I got to be a responsible human being for once in my life. So yeah, that was very interesting. But I think the name of the game is sleep, and being tired, your time kind of, especially when you have a job, when you have other responsibilities, it's like everything does not stop because your family had a baby. That was something that I had to get used to, of how does my day-to-day schedule kind of shift and change because I'm not going to be getting as much sleep. So, Stu, how long into your journey are you being a dad?
Well, first and foremost, before we get into that, all I'm doing is sitting here thinking, I already screwed up the first question because of lack of sleep. Normally, if I'm a guest on someone's show and they say, how are you feeling? I would say, hey guys, really excited to be here. Huge fan of the show. Thanks for having me. And I just went to, I'm tired. So excuse the lack of formalities there, but that's kind of how it is.
Yep. You get a pass, but you get a pass.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I feel like this is the perfect setting for that, and I get the pass. My daughter, her name is Paris, and she just turned 10 weeks old. Good Lord, what day is it? Yesterday, 10 weeks old.
Man.
So we're fresh. We're fresh
Dang.
into it. And my journey, everybody's journey is different. And hearing people's stories, hearing those stories is just like, it's so interesting. Before I had a kid, I have nieces and nephews and a lot of siblings and all that. But I'll be honest and blunt, I've been with people before having a child of my own. I really didn't care to hear those stories. Hey, that's your experience. You seem happy about it. Great. But I couldn't relate to it. I found myself getting bored. If we were hanging out with adult friends and they're just talking about their children, I was tuning out because I don't have kids.
Right.
And I thought, I don't really care where little Billy is going to preschool. And now I find myself engaged in those conversations and picking up information and just finding like, hey, this is interesting now. I need this support. I need this community.
Yeah.
So those conversations now, it's a whole new world where I never thought I would be a part of those conversations. I thought, hey, when I have a kid, I'm still not going to care about other people's kids. I care about other people's kids now because we're all...
Especially if they're hanging out with your kid.
Yeah.
Especially. So, 10 weeks, our experience at the hospital was unique in its own, where we went in on a Sunday at 9:30 a.m., and she was in labor until past midnight. So it was a long day. Yeah, it was a long day. You plan as much as you can. We want the beautiful music and the lights and this and that. Throw that out the window.
Yep. Yeah.
It went, it went the way it went, and we have a beautiful, happy, healthy girl. My wife is healthy, so that's all I can ask for, and it's changed our lives.
It's fantastic. And I would say about the friends thing, about like talking with friends who had kids and they would talk about their kids, and I find now it's going to be harder for you to relate to people who don't have kids.
Yes.
You're going to have that struggle now where it's like you're only going to want to be around people who can share what it's like to be in the trenches, because if you don't have that experience, you just don't, there's like nothing to talk about anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah. I've found too where there's so much, I'm sure we'll get to social media because that's just a nightmare right now when it comes to parenting, but
yes,
there's that line and you see arguments and battles. It's almost like political sides going at it of kids versus no kids, and you see these people who are almost glorifying not having kids. I'm going to be the rich auntie or uncle, no kids weighing me down, and then the people going, you don't know love until you have a child, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
To each their own. There is no better or worse. You go on your path, and I think that those arguments are just a waste of time and the dumbest things ever. Agreed.
And I think Vactor and I, we've talked about this before. There are plenty of parents out there who shouldn't be, and there are plenty of non-parents out there that should be. And so like, I'm glad that people have the choice there, because if you really want that in your life, then clearly you're meant to have that. And then there are those that struggle to have children. There are those that don't struggle at all, or they have to seek out alternative means. But I think like the fact that the option exists and it's not something that's dictated by a country or whatever else, like that's always at least one nice thing. But yeah, you're right. Celebrity culture definitely weighing in heavily this past week on that, especially with Chappell Roan. And then in the past, we've had Seth Rogen talk about it a lot and how he feels about, not having kids and how it's the greatest thing not having kids. I've been on both sides. I have to say I really enjoy being a dad. I love being a girl dad. So I'm happy to speak on that side for sure.
Yeah, you do you. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life. So when it comes to having kids or not, that's up to the individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting that we can choose to a certain extent the time period that we bring our children into the world, but there's also a large part that we can't choose. It's, okay, you're going to be born in this decade, in this century, at this time. It's such an interesting time to be alive right now. And I think about my son, he just turned 4, and he's never going to know a world without cell phones, without the internet, without social media. Like, there's all these things that for me, I did not have them as a kid. They came into existence as when I was an adult. And so my worldview obviously is going to be different than my son's. And I think that's like a real interesting thing of thinking about how those different technologies shape our lives and our worldviews. I actually remember my dad always talking about how he brought home a microwave and my mom was like, I'm never going to use that. Why'd you bring that thing home? And my dad, my entire childhood, I remember my dad saying, remember when you said you didn't want a microwave? Now look at you. You're using it all the time.
Use it every day.
Yeah. So
can.
I always think about like how technology is going to shape my son, and even like video games. That was something that my dad did not grow up with, but I grew up with. And so now my son, he sees me playing video games and he's getting some osmosis of video games in his life. Stu, is there anything that you think that maybe you weren't? I mean, it's so new for you right now, but I think, is there anything that you weren't prepared for that you were kind of thinking about as you've had your daughter now, and you kind of look back and say, oh man, that is something that I was not expecting?
Well, I first want to touch on your point about things that we had in our lives, because we're the last generation of having newspapers and rotary phones and all this.
Yeah.
But just this morning, we were changing a diaper, and I was taking her onesie off to change her clothes, and I turned to her diaper bin and I said, Kobe, like you do. And I stopped and I thought, wow, she's growing up in a world where, see, for us, I'm a huge sports fan, pop culture, obviously, shop, Vector, I can tell by your shirt, big into everything. That, I grew up and sure, I watched Michael Jordan as a kid. I was still young, but I was, aware. And I thought she's going to grow up in a world of not only you're not going to see someone like Kobe Bryant play, but he's passed away. So I have to teach you all about that. But the pop culture aspect, we're going to keep the OG Disney movies from the 80s and 90s alive, and I teach her every day my emo pop punk from the early 2000s. We have little music sessions, things like that, because if we don't keep it alive, they're never going to know about it.
Yeah.
That goes with technology, whatever you want to teach your kids.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many dying things that I think are so wonderful in the world from our childhood.
Oh, yeah.
Those cartoons, all the clean, great stuff that we grew up on, that now you kind of have to start rolling that out to them and not just latch onto new technology. Here's an iPad, here's streaming this and that. So that's something that I guess hasn't really, like, now it's starting to click, like, wow, I have a lot of work to do here. And not only coaching her to be the best person she could be, but trying to educate her to be well-rounded on things from 30, 40 years ago that helped shape me and made me proud of who I am.
Yeah. Shuff, do you have anything that you want to pass down to your daughters that you feel like is a seminal part of your growing up that you don't want to die? You want to be passed down?
Yeah, totally. So now I don't think this is something that's dying per se, but I definitely think it's a physical media, and that in itself, it has a shelf life, if you will. I like we're moving further and further away from that, and but I think that growing up for me with being a kid was story time before bed. Like getting to, reading something. And I carried that forward as a kid. I loved reading. You would always find my face in a book, and I was always absorbing something. And I've really tried to employ that with my girls as well, is before bed every single night, we're going to read a couple of stories. And it's a developmental piece. Of course, it's teaching them to how to pick out words and how to, and understanding, storytelling and taking them on a little magical adventure of, literary proportions. But it's also to keep that alive, because I think there's a certain amount that gets lost. I mean, how many adults do you know that don't read books at all? Like don't have, read a single book. And I'm like, okay, I get it, but I don't really get it as well. Like Vactor, I know you consume comic books like no one I've ever known, and it's fantastic because you have such an appetite for it. And I want my girls to have an appetite for reading as they continue to grow older, because I think it'll only encourage their own intellect, their own awareness of the world, and help them be as well-rounded as they possibly could be, I think. So yeah, that's what I would probably say.
Nice. Stu, I'm always interested, and this was something that I asked a lot of my friends who were fathers. I always said to them, what's some advice that you would give to me that you didn't know before you had your son or your daughter? Is there anything at this moment where you're at, Stu? Like I said, I know you're still young and you're still early in your fatherhood, but is there anything that you've learned over these weeks that you said, oh, I didn't know that before? This is something that I I'm new to this, and so I wasn't expecting that.
I know you told me not to prepare anything for this, but the one thing that I made a mental note of is the idea of advice, because I feel like I've learned a lot throughout this, on one side of, getting ready for having the kid, and now on this side. And I found in my experience that the advice that I was getting was mainly unsolicited, and it was from parents who, this is not everybody, but it felt like it was a projection and more of a way to kind of commiserate. I got a lot of the, just you wait, oh boy, this is coming, better be prepared for this. And it was all the, the obvious things, the lack of sleep, the, hey, maybe your relationship is going to be a little bit different. Hey, you're not going to have as much time for yourself. All those things that are kind of like, well, yeah, duh. I kind of know, I know what Google is like. I know how to figure those things out. That was a lot of the advice I was getting. And I didn't really go out and ask anyone for advice, because I kind of wanted to experience it on my own. I know how to, watch videos or research it on the internet. So I kind of kept my distance from others and asking for help until I was in it. I feel like once I'm in a situation, holy crap, I don't know how to calm this baby. I've tried this, and this. I don't know how to fit this car seat, whatever it is, or child device or toy. That's when I can go to someone who's been through this. But I found that before, it was just too muddled. It was too much fear. It added pressure that didn't need to be there, because you don't know how your child's going to be. You don't know how your relationship is going to be. You don't know. Your situation is different than mine. So I didn't find it fair to say, hey, man, you're not going to get any sleep for the first month or so. You don't know. Maybe my baby sleeps through the night just fine.
Yeah, it's true.
She's doing pretty good. But it's those types of things. And I told a father just last week, I was at a wedding, and he's a buddy of mine. And I told him just that. I said, hey, if and when you're ready, I'm here. When you get to a situation and you're in a jam, let me know and I'll help you out. But I didn't want to put anything on him now. His baby's not due for 2 months, and my baby is not his. So I feel like the advice is, that's a sticky situation.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember reaching out to you when Annie delivered. I was like, hey, if you need anything, I'm fellow girl dad, I'm here for you. But that's as far as I took it. I was just like, you'll find out on your own.
And trust me, I remember you're on the list. Or when I get into a jam and I go, hey, you said. So that to me is the most helpful thing, of just saying, hey, if and when I've probably been through something similar, I'm here if you need me.
And what's interesting is, not just is everyone's experience different, but every child is different too. Like even in your own family, like I have 2 daughters, and they couldn't be more different from each other, from the experience from newborn to where they're at now. My youngest is going to be 3 later this month, and then my oldest will be 5. She was born on the 4th of July. So that was another like newborn story, is that evening after she was born, there's fireworks like crazy. We're trying to get her to go to sleep, and it's like nonstop. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot tell you how much I hate fireworks now. Like, like it's cool because like your daughter always has a celebration. Like every year, it's like on her birthday, they're going to go all out for you. It's going to be great. But good luck sleeping that night, because
it's trauma for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As a new dad, I cannot tell you the arguments and fights I would get in with neighbors to get them to stop, because they'd be out like right outside our house, like on the street, lighting. I'm like, my newborn, please. We just got her to bed. And then if it's not her, it's like, we got her to bed and we got the other newborn to bed, because now Emily's older. And it's like, stop it. Stop it with the fireworks. So
we get it.
Yeah.
We're celebrating. It's over. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So,
Stu, I had a question. Is there anything that you can think of as your favorite newborn moment that you've had so far? I was thinking about the first time I saw my son smile, and I wasn't expecting it, and it kind of, I had an emotional trigger when he smiled, and I was like, oh, I wasn't ready for that. But it was like one of my favorite things about when I having my son. Do you have any special moments or memories that you can think of, like, oh, man, that was the first time this happened?
Absolutely. And I mean, we're still in them because it's so early.
Yes.
I feel like right now, every single day, something new is happening. And it is so mind-blowing when I'm going to get emotional, but hey.
Safe space.
Me.
This is a sanctuary for dads.
That's me. I probably cry every day out of everything you can think of, where, I'm holding her and she's asleep and I'm thinking, is she breathing? Is she? So I'm just holding her bawling, or she is awake and we're playing and she's laughing and smiling and I'm bawling. So I'm always crying.
Yes.
But these little things where I've been with my wife, we've been together since I was 16 years old. So we've been together for over 20 years.
They are an awesome couple. and Annie forever.
Forever. Yeah, we've been together forever. But in our entire relationship since high school, she has called me Bear. That's been my pet name, my nickname, and it's stuck. I never hear Stew. She calls me Bear. So now I have Paris, who I call Baby Bear, and she's my Pear Bear. You know, we got all our little nicknames. And
I love that.
And since day one, every morning, she'd wake up and I would growl, little bear growls in her face. Maybe 5 weeks after she was born, maybe 6 weeks, she growled back at me. This little tiny, the first time she made a little sound, and she just went rawr, and growled back in her little mouth. And that's something that, and now we still do it every morning.
That's
Her growls
so
are getting
cute.
bigger. Her smiles, our playtime is just the most magical, and it's just incredible to see the development where something as simple as that, she can remember and learn, and you're teaching, and that right there will always stick with me.
Yeah. I have a question
Man,
for
I
you,
love
Stu.
that.
So, one thing that is kind of a struggle, I think, in our current society is, first of all, women don't get enough time of paid leave. They get a decent amount of leave, but it's still never enough. Like, it's never enough time with their kids. But dads get way less paternity leave, and sometimes it's not even paid. So and that could be the same thing for moms too, but this is a dad podcast, we're focused on dads. That's what we know. But like for myself, I got 10 weeks of paid paternity leave with my first daughter. With my second daughter, I was a contractor. I didn't get any paid time off. I had to take an unpaid week, and that was the most I could afford to do because I'm now the sole provider of the family. I cannot take time off, and I'm a contractor. You don't get paid if you don't work. So it was a different experience with my second one. But we did have some help. We had a nanny who was helping out a little bit, and that was influential. I highly recommend that. If you don't have the help, you get the help, because we were not local to our family or friends. We were off in Colorado, we're in Washington, not by anybody. So it was tough when you only have yourselves to kind of like do stuff. But Vactor, I'm not sure how much you got in the way of any paternity leave time, but I'm curious with Stu, because I know you're a working actor, and I'm not sure if you have any other jobs that you're doing in addition to that, but what does paternity leave look like for you? And because you're a working actor, does that grant you some more available time with your daughter in that respect?
So our situation is kind of interesting, where for the last about 4 years, I was working in Los Angeles. I was acting and had a full-time gig. So we were doing that. We had a place in LA, a place in Phoenix. We were kind of doing back and forth, and we did that. And then when my wife got pregnant, we had to make a decision. Are we staying in LA, or are we going to Phoenix, or what's the deal? So we decided to relocate back to Phoenix. And I made a point to make sure I had saved up enough, because I thought when I go back to Phoenix, I want that time off. I want that time I could still pursue acting. Obviously Phoenix, smaller market, but I was still doing gigs. But I wanted that time to help her through the last few months of her pregnancy, and then really get as much time as I could with our daughter, because I'm seeing now how important that is. And you're right, both the mom and the dad don't get enough time, just period. Like, you hear some companies, I think it's like Netflix or something, they give you a year, and all these things, where I think, well, yeah, that's wonderful and that's how it should be. But if we're talking 3 to 6 weeks, like, that's just not enough time to figure this out. And for me, I took the time, and then I started picking up some gig kind of contractor work, probably, like you said you were doing, and I'm going back full time next week to work. So I've had a decent amount of time to have these moments, and I've seen friends go back after 2, 3, 4 weeks. I cannot for the life of me imagine not being around to help my wife and to help raise this little girl. I would lose my mind. I'm scared next week for going back to work and not being here for those moments, but it is what it is, and we have to provide, but it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, that is really tough. Vactor, what about you?
I can't remember this. I want to say I got 4 weeks.
Okay.
The only thing I remember about that time was watching the Snyder cut of Justice League because it was 4 hours long. I remember watching the entire thing, and I had my son on my chest at one point, and I just remember, like, man, that 4 hours went quick. That went fast. That was the only thing I remember about.
No one has ever said that about.
I watched that in 4 nights, I think.
Yeah, I think I split that up into installments. Yeah, for sure. Oh
Yeah,
my
that
gosh.
was. I mean, it was number one. We were taking care of my wife and my son, but then also it was lockdown. It was also COVID, so it was like we didn't have anything to do. We didn't have anywhere to go, so we just kind of watched a bunch of TV. But that was I remember that specifically, the Snyder cut, just because it was 4 hours long, and getting to the end and being like, man, we just spent 4 hours watching that. But that was my paternity time.
one piece of advice that I will give, and I will actually stick by
yeah.
this, is a buddy of mine. I'm a big cinephile. I love TV, huge everything. And I have my shows. I call them my stories. And I watch my shows when my shows are on my time. And my buddy said, I said, hey, I forget what the show was at the time. Maybe Better Call Saul, or who knows what it was. And I said, hey, did you see last night's episode? No, man, we're backed up about 4 or 5 weeks because they had a kid. And I just thought, well, how is that possible? Where are your priorities? I thought, I'll be watching my shows when I have a kid. No, you don't actually. And, if you do, you're watching it on, no volume with the lights off and you have the screen dimmed. But I have found that with, I'm a huge sports fan too. I have made sacrifices, I guess, the minimal ones, of not staying up with your shows. You're not going to the movie theater. I'm not watching every game like I used to. And these are things that in the beginning I thought, well, I guess my life's over, no fun anymore. But I'm finding now that it's kind of a joy to not be so attached to everything. I don't need to watch every single minute of every game. Maybe I don't watch 2 or 3 episodes, but I stay off the internet and we can binge them one night when we get some free time. So you're not missing anything by not staying up with those things. Life goes on. You have a beautiful new life to take care of. But if you think you're going to stay up to date with your stories, forget about it.
It's true. that is a tough thing, especially, very tough thing. Or you wait until they're asleep, and then you hope.
Oh yeah.
You hope for that.
You hope you get an hour,
you hope it lasts. You're like,
hour.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you just give me 30 minutes? I just need 24 minutes. All right, 24 minutes.
Yes, that is the perfect advice, Stu. Thank you very much. I can't thank you enough for joining us. This half hour flew by, actually.
Oh, wait, Factor, before we close up, I don't want to leave our audience without me telling that quick story about being trying to figure out dinner after my wife at the time giving birth.
Oh,
so
yes, that's right. Yes,
we were dead set. We both wanted pot pies for whatever reason. Like after she gave birth, she was like, "I want a pot pie. I want a chicken pot pie." But we didn't have anything at the store, and it was like we wanted something fresh. We wanted it made. We didn't want to have to wait, whatever else. So there was a place. We lived in Sedona at the time in Arizona. And there was a restaurant, I can't remember the name of it, but they made the most delicious pot pies. And we knew about them. It was part of like our birth plan, believe it or not. Like
oh wow,
this is where we're going to order from after she gives birth. It's like we got it all planned out. I call them to place the order. I'm like, just no big thing. Like I'm just ready to do it. And they say, "Oh, that's the only item on the menu that we don't do takeout." And I'm like, "Wait a minute." I was like, I know what you guys have. Do you have containers for salads, right? She was like, yeah. I was like, can you put the pot pie into the container that you put like the salad in? I was like, it doesn't have to look like a pot pie anymore. It doesn't, like you don't have to put the ramekin in there too. Just shovel the ingredients into the to-go box and I will take that with me. Like that's what I need. She's like, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that. I'm like, you can't take what you cooked and put it into a box for me? I was like, you do it with all the other things that are on your menu. What is the deal? Why can't you? She's like, I'm sorry, it's our policy. I'm like, where's your manager? I had to get the supervisor on the phone. Supervisor wasn't available because apparently someone in the bathroom had like just pooped all over the walls.
What?
Just like, yeah. And
what
they were
going on at this restaurant?
I'm serious. They had Jackson Pollock the walls. It was quite the abstract painting. And so that person wasn't available. So I was like, well, when they're done cleaning, you have them call me because I'm not done. Supervisor calls me back like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes later. I'm like, I'm really sorry to hear that you had to clean up all that SHIT, but I am losing my mind and you better get your pot pies in a bucket and a bowl and whatever you can get because my wife just gave birth and she wants a pot pie and she's going to get a freaking pot pie. No, did not happen. Oh. After all of that, I was like, I'm never going to your establishment again. I'm gonna just rake you over the coals on Yelp. I was like, you'll never see another customer. I was so mad.
Dang.
And it got to the point where I was, because I like was running on like no sleep, right? Because it was like at midnight, so we woke up and we were awake for like the rest of the day. So we really didn't sleep at all the night before. So I was like delirious on the phone with this guy. Like I whatever I sound like right now trying to recount the story, nowhere near the composure. By the time I was done with the phone call, I'm like crying, so upset that I couldn't.
Dang.
No.
And I remember my wife at the time, she was like, it's not a big deal. I was like, So I don't think anyone on the history of this earth has ever been so upset about not getting a pot pie as me, but that's what happens when you have a newborn daughter and you're not thinking clearly and you haven't slept. So, yeah.
Dang. Well, on that note, Shaw, that was a great way to close the episode. Big thanks to Stu for joining us, sharing all the early dad vibes. Seriously, nothing beats that newborn stage. Man, that newborn smell I can remember, even when it totally kicks your butt.
It's wild. And just being here for 30 minutes, we didn't really touch on the struggles, which is kind of nice, where, we all know, I think that's one commonality is it's hard work. It is hard work no matter your situation, if you're back to work, if you're doing it on your own, whatever it is hard work. And people always complain about the sleep. Yeah, none of us have gotten any sleep, but there's just something in you as a father that when you hear your kid and they need you for whatever reason, doesn't matter, you get that superhero, like your shirt says, you get that Superman strength, and you just do what has to be done. And I hope that fathers continue to do that. Show up for your kids, do what needs to be done. But it's just been a joy to hang out and just talk about some fun stuff, and it's mostly good. I mean, yeah, there's tough stuff, but it's mostly good. So it's nice to hear that you guys are having a good time.
When you've got your kid on you, that oxytocin that kicks in, oh my god, that's the best feeling. My daughter still will lay on me, and sometimes when she's not feeling well, even though she's so big, like, she'll still lay on me, and I still get that feeling. It'll, like, hit me, and I'm like, immediately I'm sleepy because I'm just so, like, relaxed with her, and, like, we're so connected, and I love that feeling. So you got some great times ahead of you, Stu. I'm really excited for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, shout out to all the new parents out there. If you're feeling overwhelmed, tired, or like you're screwing it all up, welcome, because you're doing it just fine. We'll catch you all in the next episode of Dads to the Future. But until then, keep your diapers tight, your bottles full, and your flux capacitors fluxing.
Yeah.